You're listening to The Breakfast Show on Faith FM with myself, Scaffy, my brother Elliot, and producer Shell here with us on the studio. In this hour, we're going to be talking about things that can be made out of hemp.
Yeah, the hemp plant.
The hemp plant, yes. And we're not talking about unhealthy things.
Not unhealthy
for your
things.
body. Talking about like actual useful things.
Useful products that are actually really, really cool.
And not the kind of things that you smoke or anything like that. No, we're absolutely down with that. We are, however, going to also be talking about what's the change of attitude between the Israeli government and Christians.
Interesting.
They're trying to make up for, there's a lot of things that made the Christian community really, really upset lately from Israel. And now they're trying to make it up.
Ooh, okay.
By appointing an ambassador to the Christian world.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about that.
That sounds interesting.
Today. So let's first start with a quiz question. So please, producer Shell, what is quiz question number 3?
Okay, well, I can assure you that the answer to this question is not hemp.
It's not hemp.
Okay, good. It's not a hemp-themed episode today.
Oh, man.
What piece of clothing did the soldiers put on Jesus? So they gave him a crown and something else. What was it that they put on him? That was clothing. It wasn't a hemp garment, I can tell you that. We've got one correct answer. We've got 2 correct answers in the studio. 0491-064-669. What piece of clothing did the soldiers put on Jesus? They gave him a crown of thorns and something else.
What was an interesting piece of clothing.
Very interesting piece of clothing, and I often wondered, where did it come from?
Yeah,
have you ever thought about that?
I actually hadn't even thought of that.
Yeah, I thought about that, and I can share with you my 2 cents when we get to talk about...
When we get to the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting point. Where did the clothing come from?
Yeah, but don't give away what the clothing is.
I won't.
I know that you're almost doing it. I know that you want it in your heart. 0491-064-669 if you want to play along the quiz game with us. And now we're going to be talking about all things hemp except for the smoking bit.
Except for the smoking bit. Yeah. That's right.
And which, again, don't do it. It's bad for you.
It is bad for you. It is. There is actually nothing good to be gained from smoking. But I want to clarify something because this is interesting. Usually when people talk about hemp, it's always like, oh, this is bad. Well, there is actually a distinction between the hemp plant itself and the marijuana plant. Both come from the same plant species, which is cannabis sativa.
Okay,
that's
so hemp gets a bad rap.
Hemp gets a bad rap because most people know hemp, when quote unquote hemp, is mostly actually confused with marijuana. And the difference is the amount of THC, or tetrahydrocannabinol, is the actual chemical. That's the chemical that gets people high.
Okay.
THC. Marijuana plants have a high amount of THC in their flowers.
Okay.
But hemp plants have almost none. So they have like less than 0.3%. So pretty much no THC. What they do have is CBD oil, which can actually be used for medicinal properties. Like there's pain relieving medication that can come from CBD oil, and there's like skincare products and whatnot. But what I wanted to talk about today, which is really interesting.
The only product of hemp that I've consumed in the past was the hemp seeds.
Yeah.
Hemp seeds are actually highly proteic. There's a lot of protein, and they can sprinkle it.
They're great.
But it was funny because I had a couple of friends that they used to smoke pot before in their previous life, before they became Christians. And one day, and I didn't know because I never smoked it in my life. I was that lucky and blessed. And then, so one day I offered them, hey, do you guys like to sprinkle some hemp seeds into your breakfast? They had never seen it before. So then I handed them over the packet and they opened up. They kind of gave a bit of a sniff inside of the contents and they started to laugh because it reminded them of their previous life.
Yeah, it's interesting. But so this is what I wanted to talk about today, which I found very fascinating. There was an article that I read that showed that the scientists have been able to manufacture a polycarbonate that is based from hemp, from the hemp plant.
Oh, really?
Now, polycarbonates, for those who don't know, are like hard plastics. So things like PET, so your water bottles, plastic water bottles.
Like PVC as well, like your...
I think so.
Wow.
I think so. So they're able to manufacture from
That's
hemp.
crazy.
Yeah, polycarbonates are like hard plastics.
Man, all of these like bioplastics, I think this is so amazing.
Yeah, it is. It is actually super fascinating.
When you get, so basically, are you telling me that when you use it long enough, you can just chuck it in your compost and it's going to be decomposing in no time?
I'm actually not certain on that. I'm not sure if it's like a biodegradable.
It should be, because that's the thing.
Well, it should be, but it actually depends on how they've composed this polycarbonate, because I don't think it's 100% plastic free.
Oh,
I don't think it's 100% plastic free, but the main ingredient is actually CBD oil instead of this substance called bisphenol A. So most current PET plastics or polycarbonates, they are produced using this substance called bisphenol A, which
BPA.
is BPA, which is derived from our fossil fuels, crude oils, and natural gas and all that kind of stuff. That's what they use to produce these plastics. And the issue with those plastics is that they don't degrade, or if they do, they leak microplastics, which there's been plenty of research that shows
I'm
microplastics
even
are
afraid
bad.
to know how many credit cards worth of plastic I have circulating in my body.
And dude, the whole topic of microplastics is quite a daunting one.
Yeah.
It's quite a daunting one, because there's even studies that have shown that microplastics and even nanoplastics can end up in like testicles and affect sperm production. So there's actually a significant problem with fertility that can result from microplastics, which is bad. So if we can avoid it, we should try and avoid it. Yeah. That's bottom line.
Oh, look, I try to, in my home, I replace all of my Tupperwares, like my plastic food containers, by glass ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like slowly over the years. And water bottles, always metal.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
It's a great idea. And so, but back to this article that I thought was so interesting. I learned something about this, which is this thing called high glass transition. So you know how when you have plastics, and if it gets too hot, it starts to melt. It becomes rubbery, and you can flex it and bend it and whatnot. Like if I have a plastic water bottle, my Mount Franklin water bottle or whatever, and then if I heat it up and put maybe boiling water in it or something, it'll get really soft and rubbery like. That's called the high glass transition. So all plastics have a temperature at which they're a solid, and then there's a transition temperature, the high glass transition temperature, which is where it transitions from a solid to a rubbery state. And then if you keep heating it up even more, it'll become like a liquid. Well, what they discovered with this CBD or hemp-based polycarbonate is that unlike most plant-based plastics, this one has a very high glass transition. So the temperature at which it becomes plastic or moldy and rubbery is very high, which means it can resist.
Very stable.
It's very stable. So you can use it to hold boiling water. You can use it to hold temperatures that are hot, and it won't melt, which is really, really good.
This is better than plastic then.
It's pretty much, it's a very good substitute for the plastics, the hard plastics that we use for that kind of stuff that need to be able to be temperature resistant, which is super, super fascinating that they discovered all this from this plant, hemp.
Now, look, it's so versatile. I remember some of the uses of hemp that I've seen around. One of my friends, he built a house, and the insulation in between the walls is hemp fiber.
Exactly. That's something that is super interesting as well. They've discovered that they can make this thing called hempcrete, which is a combination of hemp and lime, I'm pretty sure.
So you make like a concrete out of
hemp and lime and water, which makes this like concrete-like substance that it's actually a really great insulator. And this was super, super fascinating. I've actually got it written down here. Yeah, so hempcrete is hemp. It's a composite material made of hemp hurdles, lime binder, and water. And it's super good for insulation in construction. It's really great at fire resistance.
Okay.
So it's fire resistant. It's really good at acoustics, so acoustic regulation or acoustic insulation. It's also really good at moisture regulation, so it's helping prevent mold.
Oh,
which is
good.
really, really fascinating. All this from one place. And I know that there's also, I think there's a growing popularity of hemp-based fiber in clothing. So you can get T-shirts and pants and stuff that is completely made out of hemp fibers. And I had a friend of mine.
They look and feel like normal cotton clothes, don't they?
Feels like cotton pretty much, or very similar. And apparently these clothes last ages and ages. Like they barely wear out. They can go through plenty and plenty of wash cycles. They won't get holes. They won't get anything because the fiber itself is actually very strong and, resistant to tearing and all that kind of stuff. Which is so awesome.
That's great, man. I need them because I get holes in all of my clothes in no time.
Yeah, and the fact that we can get all of this from just one plant that God has created just shows like how versatile God's creation is.
And also, look, every time that I hear like news like that, I also think, man, how ignorant of the things that we don't know are we?
Yeah.
It's like, man, really what else we don't know?
Well, you know what's even crazy?
Because until yesterday, we didn't know that,
Yeah.
and now we do. What else we don't know? So it's amazing how God created this world with so much wisdom, and it's so fun to discover these hidden little properties that God made in
stuff.
everything.
So much cool stuff. And I even read somewhere that diesel engines can actually run off, like you can use hemp seed oil to produce biofuel. Biodiesel that you can run a diesel engine off. So like even there is another use for the hemp plant. So it's crazy how much God has provided us with the tools and things that we need that we could just find in nature itself. Like
amazing.
Yeah, how many plants are there that have medicinal properties?
Yeah,
like
animals.
Animals. Our diet that God has provided with so many plants for us to eat that give us energy and life. It's amazing that God is able to do all of that. Like he's provided all of that in his creation.
You're listening to the Breakfast Show podcast on Faith FM. Positively different.
And it's time for the answer to our previous quiz question. So producer Shell, could you please give us the answer?
Yeah, the answer to our last quiz question was a purple robe. That was the piece of clothes that the soldiers put on Jesus to mock him for being royalty.
Yeah, along with that crown of thorns. That would have been so painful. Imagine that, having just a crown of these thick thorns stuck into your head. Man, that would hurt.
And you know what? They believe that because there's not a lot of thorny bushes that you could actually make a thorn of crowns from in that region.
Yeah, okay.
But the one that has is actually, they believe it's from the same bush that Moses had the burning bush experience. It was a bit of a thorny bush, yeah.
Wow.
So that was, which is quite profound if you think of it.
Yeah.
That when God sees a thorny
amazing.
bush, he sees an opportunity to reveal his love, his fire, because fire represents love as well in the Bible. He sees the opportunity to show his love for Moses, for his people.
Whoa,
Yet when humans are seeing
really cool point.
that thorny bush, they use it to create a crown of thorns to mock the Savior.
Yeah.
And the purple robe, so have you ever occurred to you? Because purple was a very expensive thing.
Yeah, difficult to get.
Very difficult. It's usually the apparel of kings.
Yeah.
And really highly important people. What was it doing in the hands of soldiers?
Yeah.
And one of the theories is that this is probably an old, used one that some, big shot political figure had, and someone with contacts in the military got it from there, using it as part of their torture and mocking arsenal.
Right. So it was just an old discarded one.
Old discarded purple robe.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And which is the interesting thing is that this is one of the big themes in the gospel, particularly the Gospel of Mark, is that oftentimes the mockery that people make of Jesus, they're actually pointing to the truth of who Jesus is.
Yeah.
So they're thinking they're mocking him as the king of the Jews, but guess what? He is.
Not only
and
the
they
Jews,
didn't
but
know
the king of the
the
world.
king of the universe.
Yeah. It's interesting how that is the case.
All right, we're going to be talking about a new thing that's happening in Israel. So, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu decided that he was going to appoint a new kind of diplomat, a diplomat to the Christian world.
Okay.
So normally when you have diplomats, you send diplomats to certain countries.
Yeah.
But this one is actually sending this diplomat to talk to Christian leaders worldwide, be them in America, in the Vatican, or anywhere else. And the reason being is because there's a lot of Christians and growing very weary of Israel international policies, particularly policies against Christians lately.
Yeah.
So I want to share with you some of the things that happened so you have an idea of what led them to create this new position. Well, a big one that made the headlines world over was, have you seen the Israeli soldier that was using a big sledgehammer to hammer down a statue of Jesus in Lebanon?
No, I actually haven't seen that at all.
So it went really viral. There's two soldiers, one of them filming, obviously the other one using this sledgehammer, and they are tearing down, they're just like completely desecrating an image of Jesus in Lebanon. Part of the Lebanese campaign that generated a huge outcry. Say, why do you need to do this?
Yeah.
How is that going to help you accomplish any of your military objectives? And as a result of that, the Israeli Defense Force said, look, we are going to investigate the case. And they ended up jailing these two soldiers. Each one got 1 month worth of jail time, plus both of them lost their job. So they were sacked. They were stood down from the army.
I think that's a good result.
Yeah, that was a good result.
Yeah.
But not only that, there was a Christian village called Debel near the Israeli border in southern Lebanon.
Okay.
Again, it's a Christian village, not a hideout place of Hezbollah or anything like that.
Yeah.
And that city was their basically main energy supply comes from solar panels, and some Israeli Defense Force soldiers just gratuitously just went there and they destroyed all their solar panels.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Again, for nothing.
For no reason at all.
No good reason at all.
Yeah, that's...
Talking about civilian infrastructure, energy infrastructure in a Christian village. So a lot of Christians say, hey, wait a minute, what's going on? How is that going to help you advance in your military objectives here? And that didn't stop there. Because you can say, look, this is war, this is acts of war. Sometimes, bad things happen in war. It's unfortunate, but, it's understandable.
Yeah.
But then let's move on to things that happen inside of the capital in Jerusalem. During Easter this year, there has a huge incident where the highest ranked Catholic cardinal in the Holy Land, Cardinal Pier Battista Pizzaballa.
What a name.
What a great name. And particularly guys like,
Pizzaballa.
I like to have a pizza in my name. It's my favorite food. But
oh, man.
He had a couple of other clergy, and they were supposed to go to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which is regarded as the site where Jesus was crucified.
Right. Okay.
And in Chum, they have a church to celebrate that.
Yeah.
And during Easter, they were supposed to go there to offer some prayers. I think that they're going to film something and take some photos as well.
Okay.
They have been doing this, by the way, for centuries.
Yeah, okay. So it's been happening for a long,
It's happening
time.
forever. However, this time, for the first time in many centuries, the police decided that they would block them from entering the holy site.
Really?
Yes. Say, yep, you're not coming in here.
Wow.
The police, their justification was, no, there's some threats of Iranian missiles in this area. They have fallen already some days ago. We have restrictions on gatherings of people, particularly large gatherings of people in this area. So we're not going to let you enter your religious site.
Yeah, wow.
And of course, say, look, this is outrageous. There's no immediate threat. We're not, there's a lot of other things working and functioning, in this area. Why are you only blocking me from getting into this holy site that we maintain?
Yeah.
And that's so significant.
That's very valid.
For billions of Christians. Look, it was so big that the Vatican got involved.
Oh, really?
President Trump got involved. Like the United States got involved. Say, look, there's the Italian Prime Minister. They all got on social media. They're saying, look, this is absolutely unreasonable. It's unjustifiable. There's no actual proper reason to block a priest from going to his office in his church to pray.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
That was a big one. So actually, the prime minister, that whole message came up to the prime minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, and he actually overruled that and said, look, just let people go to the church.
Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah.
That's
it definitely, this outcry actually changed his hand.
Yeah.
But not all of them have. Because another thing that the Christian community is in absolutely uproar about in Jerusalem, listen to this one. They have about 15 to 20 Christian schools in Jerusalem, like old schools, like very traditional schools. And some of these schools rely on Christian teachers that live in the West Bank. So the West Bank is controlled by the Palestinian Authority, is basically bordered with Israel. They're different territory. But these teachers, they always used to enjoy an actual green card that allowed them to cross the border, to go to work, and then go back home.
Okay.
Every day.
Yeah.
Now, the Bibi decided that, and Israel decided that they will not allow these teachers to teach anymore.
Really?
Yes. So
Was
this
there
is affecting.
Any reason for it?
No. So the reason that they said is that we decided that your teaching qualifications, even though yes you have been working here, and even though you have been teaching at these schools for many years, we decided that your teaching qualifications are not good enough for Israel. So we're not going to let you come down here. From next year onwards, you're not going to be able to teach.
That's so frustrating. That would be so frustrating as a teacher.
They had like a strike with like over 25,000 students.
Oh, really?
Coming together and people meeting and say, hey, wait a minute, we need teachers.
Yeah, so not even the teachers strike, but the students were
the schools went on strike, the teachers, but that matter is still unresolved.
Okay.
They still haven't backtracked on that one. So there's about 200 to 250 teachers who just the other day were just Christian teachers doing their jobs, and now they're going to be denied access into the whole land. Surely that they will have some security justification, but for the Christian community, they're saying, hey, are we seeing some kind of religious intolerance?
Yeah, discrimination.
Yeah. And then the last one was there's been a lot of attacks on the residents of a city called Taibe. It is a biblical town of Ephraim where Jesus sought refuge shortly before his crucifixions.
Okay.
And some of the Jewish settlers in that city, which is the only entirely Christian village in the West Bank, they have been vilified and attacked by Jewish settlers, and basically the authorities in Israel are turning a blind eye, not doing anything about it. They're just letting them, vilify these Christians there.
Yeah, okay.
So the Christians were like, hey, look, guys, it looks like the freedom of religion and peace that we have enjoyed for so many years that we took for granted, it's not being taken for granted anymore. And the government is not doing anything. So as a response to that, Benjamin Netanyahu decided to appoint a new ambassador. He used to be an ambassador to Azerbaijan with 18 years of experience. His name is George Dick. He is a part of the Orthodox Christian community. He's also Israeli and Arab. And then their hope now is that this man will be sent to talk to these countries on behalf of to talk to Christian leaders from a Christian perspective, coming from an official Israeli authority position.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's see. What's that work? We wish him all the best in that work, and we really hope that Christians, not only in Israel, not only in the West Bank, but all over the world, can enjoy as much as possible and for as long as possible the freedom to worship our Creator God according to the dictates of our conscience.
Yeah.
You're listening to the Breakfast Show podcast on Faith FM. Positively different.
now is the time for our interview. And we are interviewing today Dr. Taz Walker from Christian Ministries International, and we are going to be talking about geological ages. Dr. Taz, thank you so much for joining us today here on The Breakfast Show. It's great to talk to you.
It's great to talk to you. Indeed it is, and looking forward to it. I'm going to be talking about something which is interesting and also empowering for people.
So interesting, Dr. Taz. And look, I think that a lot of people wonder when they see, in mainstream media, in scientific magazines and articles, we very often drop I like to call the M bomb, the millions of years bomb on us, particularly when we're talking about rocks. And they look at these rocks, oh yeah, this has been here for like 800 million years. Oh yeah, this rock is, that was developed 250 million years ago. How did they know that? Because definitely that does not align with the geological frame set that we often see in the Bible, or does it? So tell us, how do we interpret all these millions of years? Could it be that the Earth is, the rocks at least of the Earth are billions and billions of years old? Or is the methodology being used to that a little bit crooked?
Well, their methodology is a bit mixed. They're very good at working out which rocks came first and which rocks came second, and then and so on. But then the number they put on them is what is wrong, and it's based on assumptions. So, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly clear.
Okay, and that's good. So, what we've done at creation.com is we have a little diagram, we call it a geology transformation tool that people can use. They can go there and download it, the geology transformation tool, and it's a very simple thing to use. They don't have to know anything much about geology at all. And wherever they go, whether it's a museum or whether it's at a tourist destination or something like that, they just, if there's something on that people are saying, they just look it up on the chart, and you can find out where it was as far as Bible history is concerned, because most of the rocks formed in the flood. And so rather than taking millions of years, they formed very rapidly, catastrophically, as a matter of fact. It was a terrible catastrophe that destroyed the earth at the time of Noah. And so everything happened quickly. And so that's the key to understanding it. And we get a lot of reports from people who download this little diagram and use it when they go out, when they're walking around or exploring something, and it's very, very helpful. So on that diagram, we've got things like the Wave Rock in Western Australia, just as an example. There's Ayers Rock, Uluru. There's Three Sisters, which is in southeast Queensland, and there's also Three Sisters in New South Wales, and Glasshouse Mountains in southeast Queensland. So those are there, and so people can find their way around, and it gives them a great amount of confidence.
That is fascinating. I've never seen this tool before. I'm looking at it right now, and it is really amazing. I actually have a couple of questions in that regard, Dr. Taz, because you mentioned that a lot of these rocks, they were formed during the flood period. What do you mean by being formed? Weren't they already in existence before the flood, and they were just like tumbled around and washed over during the flood? What are some of the best theories that we have that align what we see with what the Bible tells us?
Well, the Bible talks about the flood coming. Noah put the animals on the ark, and the door was shut. And then it says the fountains of the great deep broke open. So there was a huge, monstrous earthquakes and upheavals which occurred, breaking up rocks. And then it says it rained. The windows of heaven opened, and it rained for. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights, and the water came up and it lifted up the ark, and it continued raining until the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. So it was an enormous flood, and a lot of people really think that Noah's flood was only a small thing, but it was monstrous. And the rocks of the earth, which geologists look at, they call it the geologic column, they actually formed during Noah's flood. And people, it's hard for people to get their mind around how big it is. The flood was enormous. And, so for example, in Australia, for example, the Three Sisters, when you go and look at those, you can see that it's sediment, which has been laid down by water, and they say it's 270 million years old. But when you look at this chart, you see that was as the floodwaters were rising. There's a little arrow. And it was as they were getting towards the top, the floodwaters were reaching their peak. And and when you look at it, you can understand how it formed just by looking at the shape of it. So it's very insightful for people to be able to use that and look at it.
So tell us, for those of us who are very, like myself, not very literate in geology, what is a sediment rock? How is it formed in nature? What do we need to get these kinds of rocks shaped or created?
So what happens is when you have a flood, like we have floods today, but they're only small, very compared to Noah's flood. So when we have a flood today, the water will wash along over the ground, and it will erode the ground away. So it'll make gullies and erode out big hollows and that, and it carries the sediment away, and so the water will be brown, it'll be full of this sediment, and so it goes somewhere where it can slow down and it deposits the sediment. So that's what happens is the waters of Noah's flood were flowing along over hundreds and hundreds of kilometers very rapidly, and they carried the sediment, and they, for example, in the Three Sisters in New South Wales, they deposited the sediment there, and we can see in the Three Sisters, we can see that it's sediment, it's sand and mud, and that which has been laid down, and we can see that it's a very flat area, so that indicates that the water was flowing very, very rapidly, carrying lots of sediment and depositing it there.
So, for example,
I don't know if that is clear.
Yeah, it definitely is really helping me out. So, like, let's think about the Three Sisters here. I'm seeing a photo of it. I've been there myself as well a few times. So, are you saying that the Three Sisters that are there, they have been carried over as they are, or somehow a bunch of smaller sediments, they somehow agglutinated and formed those rocks by, I don't know, superposition? Because my question would be, when we see the sediments that is laid by a small flood, you can probably go there with a shovel and you can mix them around. They don't like get glued together like these big rocks. So are these big rocks the actual sediment, or they were formed by the sediments? This is something that it's not clear to me.
Yeah, that's good. That's a really good question, because the sediment was deposited during the flood, and I can see from the diagram, it was as the flood waters had been flowing for, it had been going on for quite a few months at that stage, and so this was as the flood waters were reaching their peak. And so the sediment covered from south of Wollongong and north as far as Newcastle. Yeah, right up north, and then it goes out as far west as Lithgow. So this sediment covered a huge area, hundreds of kilometres, and it formed what the geologists call it a basin. If you have a basin and you get muddy water, the mud gets caught in the basin, and so this is what happened here. It's a big area where the waters of Noah's flood were flowing, and they deposited the sediment that forms the Three Sisters, deposited in this area, which the geologists call the Sydney Basin. But see, that's not the end of the story. That's just getting the sandstone in there, and you can see it at Echo Point. You can see the Three Sisters, and across the valley, you can see the same layers of sandstone across the valley, so you can see how far it extends. And then what happened is, the waters of Noah's flood went up, and when they covered that whole area, see, this is interesting to imagine this. They waters of Noah's flood covered that whole area when you're looking out, and you can see the plateau is flat. And that's because the waters of the Noah's flood covered the whole area, and they eroded it flat when they were covering the whole area. So you tie that in when Noah was in the ark. The ark had come to rest on the mountains of Ararat, and the water was going down. and he was wanting to see, when the water had gone. And after 2 months, he saw that there were other mountains which could appear. So this is when this flat area, the plateau at the Three Sisters was formed. And then as the waters went down, I'm just looking at a diagram now, a picture now. As the waters went down, the plateau came above the water went down below the plateau, but it was still flowing out, and it carved that valley, the Jamison Valley. You can see how wide it is, much wider than the river that's in it. And so you look at that, they call it an overfit valley. It's too big for the river, but it was actually carved by Noah's flood.
Yeah, very interesting. So yeah, because you can see it's kind of like a canyon. Can we call that that area in the Blue Mountains, that famous area next to the Three Sisters? Is that a canyon technically?
That's really basically a canyon, a great big canyon that's formed there. It's short. It's not as big as Grand Canyon, but it is still very wide, and it's fairly long. I don't know, a couple of kilometers long. But there's also a canyon on the other side of the Blue Mountains at Goss. There's a lookout that's there, and you can see similar canyons on the other side of the area.
Dr.
So
Tess,
it formed during Noah's flood. Yeah.
Yeah. I can see. Yeah, I can definitely see. Like as you mentioned, I never really noticed, but it's true. There's like the river that flows through that valley is just so tiny. For us to have like this massive V-shaped valley, we needed like a humongous amount of water to go through.
Yeah, that's right.
So question that I have for you is that let's say we are walking, how can we enjoy the rocks when people are going on hikes, for example, and they're going for a walk and they're wanting to show something to children? What are some of the things that we can point out to them in nature about the nature of rocks that point to God's creation? Do you have any tips for that? Or
well, I think that having something like that chart is very helpful. Mm-hmm. And particularly if you're going in a particular area, it's good to maybe download something, say, from creation.com, and if you're going to Wave Rock in Western Australia, you'd look for an article on Wave Rock, and it will describe it. So you would then, when you're there, the article would explain how different things formed and that sort of thing. Same with Ayers Rock, and which is a little bit young, not much younger, but a little bit younger, a bit later in the flood. And there's a Catachuca, which used to be called the Olgas. They're out in the same area. And then I've got the other one on this chart, but is the Glasshouse Mountains. So you can see that. But if you're going into an area, downloading something from creation.com, just the site you're going to, where you're going, and is often an article about it. All over the world, there's people that write into us, and we write answers to them and explain to them what they're looking at.
Absolutely. This is fascinating. I think that would make it for a great hike to go with your friends or with your family to go to these massive monoliths that pepper the Australian landscape, like you mentioned, the Glasshouse Mountains, the Three Sisters, or the Ayers Rock, and also to know the geological history behind it and how it aligns with the Bible. Well, Dr. Tess, one question that I have here, we have about only 1 minute left, but can you just give us just a really quick rundown about how did geologists like evolution that come with an evolutionary perspective arrive at these massive, big billions of years numbers versus what can actually be determined with science that we have today, just like in a nutshell?
Well, basically, it all comes back to they made an assumption. They believed that Noah's flood never happened. And so in order to explain what they're looking at, they assume that it all happened slowly and gradually by what we see happening today. And so that is where the millions of years comes from, that assumption. And whereas creation geologists or biblical geologists, we assume that the Bible records real history, and so the Noah's flood is a key, because most of the rocks that geologists say took millions of years, almost all of them formed during the flood. There was a few that formed after the flood, and basically that's how it all happened.
And what strikes me is that it is such a weak assumption that everything was formed over long periods of time, uneventful, because even if you don't believe in Noah's flood, surely you believe that the earth can have some pretty significant and catastrophic events from time to time. And to take that out of the equation entirely, I think it's quite, dubious, in my opinion.
That's right. There's a lot of things which don't fit. There's a lot of problems and issues as to where this idea doesn't work, but they're committed to this philosophy. And so even if it doesn't work, they think, well, we're going to figure out something eventually.
Yeah.
So it's a commitment to a philosophy, which is what it says in 2 Peter. In the last days, scoffers will come, and they'll say everything's carried on just as it has since the beginning, and they deliberately ignore creation and the flood.
Absolutely.
It says that in Peter.
That is very timely. What a great scripture that you brought up. Dr. Tez, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing with us some incredible science and research. And we are going to be sharing that really cool infographic, that transformation tool that you shared. By the way, radio friend, if you would like the link to the article of that Dr. Tez is mentioning here, is referring to in this conversation, and this tool that they organized, please text me here, #rocks to 0491-064-669, #rocks, and I'll send you the link to creation.com and to that particular article and tool that was mentioned. Dr. Tez, thank you so much. We're looking forward to have you again with us next time.
Good on you. That's great, Scaffy. Bless you.
You too.
Thanks for being a part of the Faith FM family. Join our community on Facebook or get in touch at 1-800-FAITH-FM.